What did you just almost knock that over?
Almost. I hit it and then caught it. Got it.
Dun, 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 dun.
I just got notice last night or this morning that our Starlink is no longer best effort service. We've been upgraded to the standard.
It's a kind of effort service.
No, it's
Oh,
the
that's
full.
exciting.
Yeah. So what we have now.
You got the full Elon.
It's the same shit, but now when it gets busy, they throttle us down so the regular people can still have. So at nighttime, a lot, especially like when The Last of Us was on, like at 9 o'clock on Sundays, everybody else is watching and we're watching.
Yeah. Yeah, that sucks.
But we've been upgraded. We have been.
So
Congratulations.
you're saying that's loud. Fuck.
It's back.
So you're saying you get a free Tesla now?
Drink up, my heart is your home. We kidnap and ravage, we don't give a hoot. Drink up, my heart is your home.
Ahoy, friends.
I will never get over how dorky this version is.
It's
We
the
kidnap
only
and ravage
version.
and we are clean cut. We
What
always
other
make sure
version
to
is
have four
there?
corners of our bed straight. I don't know. It just sounds very like bare naked ladies. It just sounds very nerdy. It's like we
Are they
push
still
up our
around?
glasses.
I miss the bare naked ladies.
We
Are
push
they
up our
still
glasses
around?
and get out our pen protectors and we are pirates.
I don't know why Bare Naked Ladies made me think about this, but if it came up in one of the recent Never Not Funny episodes, and I went and listened to it when Disturbed was on Conan and sang The Sound of Silence.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
It's like, because Jimmy's like, I'm not a Disturbed fan, but holy shit. I'm like, well, I got to go listen to it. Oh my God. Like gives you chills.
Really?
Yeah. Because so they're on
all right.
Conan.
It's all right.
I think it's, oh man, such a great version of that song.
All right.
He's
And
really
it was
having to wiggle his
and it was
jaw to get his
shocking.
point across. That's all right.
It's shocking to hear because that was before. I think they were actually released it on an album, but it was Conan's like and Disturbed, and you're expecting wow, that kind of shit.
Exactly. That's why I'm in shock.
Yeah, and
They knew
and
what they were doing.
I can't remember his name. The lead singer of Disturbed, has an incredible voice,
Okay.
and did like a really creepy
Yeah.
version of that song. But
Let's listen to
it's worth a Bing, worth a YouTube.
Great.
Yeah. Let's just look up Disturbed song. Is it Sound of Silence or Song of Silence?
Sound of Silence.
The Sound of Silence.
The Sound of Silence.
And what also cracks me up to it about it is the first line of that. Mike always Mike doesn't handle his booze super well the next day, and so he doesn't drink very often. But like at deer camp, he'll might overindulge.
Are you talking about our Mike?
Yeah, our Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then like the next morning, everybody be getting up, getting breakfast ready and stuff.
I love Mike.
And Michael still be in bed, and everyone's like, "Get up, get in!" And all of a sudden, every time you'll hear from the other room, "Hello, darkness, my old friend."
I love Mike. I love Mike so
The
much.
best bits ever, and he does it every time, and it's funny
that's
every time.
very funny.
Susan
Love you,
says
Mike.
she agrees. She's heard it. Not a Disturbed fan, but it is amazing. It really is. It is really worth. Yeah, the live version on Conan is the best. I think it made me think of it because I did that like a few weeks ago. I looked it up, but then this morning I was like flipping through YouTube for one of the normal YouTube podcasts or whatever I watch, and for some reason it popped up as like a suggestion. And I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that in a while. And again, so you don't think you're not impressed?
Boop, boop, boop. Nope.
I
Don't do it for me.
I don't think that's right. I don't think
Sorry.
I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
My
that
bad.
You don't care for it.
I'm sure the Pentatonics cover is really good. I like Pentatonics a lot, actually.
I don't know what that means.
Janet, do you know who Pentatonics is?
No.
Yeah, Tracy said it was originally a Simon and Garfunkel song.
So it's one of those things.
I'm looking up.
I lost where I was going.
Okay, Jennifer,
Fuck.
listen, I'm not saying that the Simon and Garfunkel version isn't good, but I'm telling you, it's worth listening to that rendition of it. It's a really great cover.
Pentatonics is an a cappella group, but they're fucking amazing. It's not like barbershop quartet a cappella.
And they
It's like-
sing that song.
they do so much shit.
That's Pentatonic. Oh, that does sound cool. Well,
They're
if
so
you're gonna
good.
do that, you got to pull up the Disturbed version, but it's got to be the live version on Conan.
Wait,
Don't
can we
make
get in
me do
trouble for
that.
this?
Not as long as we're talking about it.
That's right. Or we just have it playing in the background during an important conversation.
Oh yeah.
Right, during a police interview.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
while the officer is going, "Oh,
Uh,
guys, what's
uh-huh.
tell me this very important part of this interview, and I need you guys to hear it." So and this is the most important question I'm going to ask you. Where were you at the night of the murder? Really, that's great. Are you going to find that, or are you going to make me find it? Because now, if you played your
I stopped
version-
looking. I stopped looking
Get your fucking phone, you guys.
because I just had I had Spotify open. Oh my god, I can't. All right, I'll look at now I can't look it up because he has to look it up because he went to go get his phone.
Where did he? Oh,
It's fine.
that's all right. Oh fuck! Is it snowing?
Yeah.
Why is it got to
It's
snow?
raining again here.
Why is it got to snow?
Yeah.
Isn't it fucking? Oh, it's not April yet, is it? It's March. We watched Wonderful Parenting this weekend. There was a giant fucking brawl at the
Oh no.
wrestling tournament between
Oh
parents.
no, really?
I mean, like
Brawl?
a brawl. I
Oh,
don't mean fist. I mean
no.
a brawl.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Stealing that wrestling limelight.
Yeah, that was fun. Police involved, all sorts of stuff.
Too accurate.
Hang on. I got a really good way to do this here.
Are you sure? What are you doing?
Everyone in
You-
chat is like, you know what? We'll go find it on our own, Bob. Let's get back to the.
Yeah,
And you're like,
Okay,
no,
this is-
we
at
are
this
going
point,
to
I'm too far in
listen
at
to
this
it.
point to let this go.
Yeah.
Montana called me a putz. I'm not even 100% sure what that means, but
It's
like,
a
oh,
loving.
putz,
It's
or
a
she's-
loving.
I figured she'd call me a
compliment.
putz.
it says Zach's a putz.
That's
Goonie
new
says
I
we
favorite.
should
don't think
address.
she was talking to you.
Bob Goonie
No.
says we should address the Adnan thing, which is not a bad idea.
we're going to.
Yeah, great.
For sure. Okay.
Look at that Bare Naked
Parents
Ladies
wrestling
plays in
or
Michigan on
wrestling,
July 22nd.
Those guys are supposed to be just the nicest guys, which
I would
is
go
not
see them.
surprising. Their music is very nice.
I would go see them.
It's friendly music.
Friendly music. Happy music. Why is we were watching what the hell were we watching? Oh, we were watching Animal House the other day, and it's got a
Uh-huh.
bunch of like just happy music in it. And you're like, why don't they make music like this anymore? Like
They
this is so
do.
wonderful. They don't. It's all
Don't they?
emotional crap.
like some upbeat. Yeah, they still right.
It's not gonna work. Some Bruno Mars.
Bruno, what about? I like Bruno Mars. You don't like Bruno Mars?
I didn't. Yeah, I was upbeat.
No,
I
he's
was
giving
saying-
an example of upbeat. Oh, Bob.
Oh,
Yo ho! It is
Stupid
a
phone is-
pirate's life for this
What's a
guy.
putz?
A putt? It's well.
Is it
You.
is it like super offensive? Should I be
No.
offended?
No, I don't think.
Can I be offended? It's
I don't think you
2023.
You can be
I think-
offended.
I think we can be offended at anything. Also, it takes a lot for that.
I
you
think the
can't
way it
offend
works
me.
in 2023 is you can only be offended for other people.
I'm also a white male, straight white male, so I don't think
You're not allowed to be offended
I
about
don't
anything.
get offended by anybody.
This is I'm gonna make this happen. There we go.
Warrior
in-
Princess says, I guess there's no hard outs today. Since we're just putzing around.
I've come to talk with you again because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain.
You don't expect that voice from Disturbed.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question. I think it was Rachel earlier in the chat. Rachel, if it wasn't you, and if whoever it was, maybe I can find it. But anyway, said that he had horrible flu, and that's why he's sitting down and stuff. So I wonder if maybe he was really sick, and they were going to sing one of their regular songs, and he was like, "I don't think I can do that. Like, I feel really bad, and my voice is not going to hold up." And they were like, "What if we do something?"
That's possible, but I want him to get to this the second time he goes through the chorus, and it sounds like
Okay.
his voice is doing just fine.
Crash test dummies.
Like he just keeps building it and building
How
it
many
and building
people
it.
are on stage playing? It sounds like there's an orchestra.
He's got the full band up there, and they're
Yeah,
playing
and-
violins and
Yeah. All right, so they planned it.
I just want him to get to the part where he really rips it here.
Thank you, Nicole.
He's
Is
got
it a
quite a
Christmas song?
range.
Sounds like a Christmas song.
This is going longer than I meant for it to, but there's part of it that we got to.
At what point is the copyright thing come into play?
Here it is.
Never.
Silence like a cancer grows.
It's any minute now. He's really going to bust it
This
out.
is a Christmas song, man. Did it happen?
Like his voice sounds like he's doing okay to me.
Did it happen?
I mean, the song's almost over, so I hope that it's happening for you.
What's that?
I said the song's almost over, so I hope that you
Did
got
it
to the
happen?
point where you wanted to
What
hear.
happened?
Yeah, I think so. So you don't
Sorry.
care. I'm sorry. I think that's
There's a lot of
beautifully
people
done.
that agree with
No,
me.
it's great.
So,
I loved it.
A lot of people agree with you.
mhm.
He trained as a cantor when young. So people rode him. I don't understand what that means.
What's a canter?
It's when a horse trots.
No, I
Right?
think a cantor is also like you
That was
sing
a joke.
in
Fuck
church.
you both.
I don't know. The only canter I know is Erica.
Somebody thought it was funny.
Nice.
Janet, I'm gonna send you a really shitty picture of me, and I want you to like tape it over that.
Listen,
Like,
Great.
but like obviously taped over it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's the best.
I stand with Montana Sky forever when she said, as you were criticizing the song, she said, like I said, Zach's a putz. Thank you very much. We're
Don't
gonna get
ever
serious here in just a
encourage
minute.
pop, y'all.
Thank you, Brian Blanchett, who says that sounded great.
Yeah.
It was the next. Did I shut it off before the right before
No.
the big one?
Apparently.
Jewish faith singing is what must be what cantor means. I think Bob really likes this. A singer, Jewish temple. Okay, cantor's a church thing. People wrote him. Thank you, Jennifer. One person got the joke. The cantor joke.
Mhm.
Jennifer Hill.
Oh, I got it.
Not till after I explained it. If you got it, there's no way you could have not thought it was funny. So it seems to me you must not have got it.
Or it
That's
wasn't
right. Yes.
funny.
Yes. Great
No,
logic.
that's impossible. That's impossible.
Impossible. Well, hey everybody! Welcome to the first 20 minutes of the show. I think
We went to
Beginning of
different
that was
churches. I
listening
can
to a
tell you that
song?
much. If
Yeah.
that's what the singers
Joel-
just sounded like.
Joel, I don't disagree. I like the song, but it's not the best. But that version of it is just one of my favorite things.
But you're right, Zach. It did sound like a Christmas song.
Yeah, was
Part of
too
it did.
Christmas.
Yeah, with
Everyone,
the-
yeah, we're all right. We're all correct.
But
today.
if you like what did you think of the range of that man's
He has
voice?
an amazing range.
And part of it is that it was shocking to me that I never like when I watch it, I'm like, this Disturbed. Like that doesn't really sing. He screams into a microphone. It's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
So,
I
there
like
you
his,
go.
I like his well-written lyrics. Ooh, wah, ah, ah, ah.
Yeah.
Well-written.
That's
Well-written.
what I said. I expect woo ah 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 ah, and then he comes out with that. You're just a hater of all things.
Pretty
Okay,
much.
well,
Yeah,
Pretty much.
just a hater.
This
of
is where
everything.
we've landed
not
now.
true.
You're a hater
Yeah,
of all things.
and
I like things.
I don't want to be your friend anymore.
Chris Cornell
so-
has
I
one
like
of the
ham and
best
cheese
voices of all
sandwiches.
time, Jason. I want to agree with you. Chris Cornell, shout out to R.I.P.
Yeah,
Chris
for sure.
Cornell, one of the best voices of all time.
100%.
Don't know who that is.
He was Soundgarden.
Oh yeah, great voice. Yes.
Phenomenal voice.
Also the feller that I don't know his name from Disturbed and great voice. Turns
His name's in here
Fuck
somewhere.
off.
I saw it come up in the chat. It might be David.
You cannot tell me that he does not have an amazing voice.
I didn't say he didn't.
You just said I could fuck off when I said he
that's
did?
about Chris Cornell, not.
Oh, you don't like Chris Cornell either?
No, I know I do. But when you said who is he,
Oh,
that's what you could fuck off.
I don't know. I don't like the language.
It's the weirdest half fighting that we've been doing this entire morning. Are they fighting? Are they getting along? No one knows.
All right. You guys ready to get serious?
Let's do it.
Ah. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Before we get started, we've got several things that we need to cover. A little bit of housekeeping. Want to just give a shout out. First of all, I just realized that what I thought had been a couple weeks since I'd been to the PO box has actually been a couple months. So Zach wants to thank listener Dan Blank for a Christmas present that I just got.
Yeah, I just got this Christmas present from Mr. Dan Blank, who's an author. Got 2 new books for my children that were supposed to be stocking stuffers, but because of over here, we got them in March. But Soccer IQ, written by Dan Blank, and Thigpen McThwacket's Incredible Racket, written by Dan Blank. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to give them to the kids for Easter.
Easter prizes.
They're Easter prizes now.
Easter prizes. So thanks, Dan. And anybody,
Dan, you're awesome.
our PO boxes on our website. If there's anything you want to send,
The
to
books
us.
are signed as well. I'm really excited.
Do
to
not
give them to the
send
kids.
perishable goods or anything with a timestamp that's important to you, because
why
Bob will let 3 months go by.
Do you know why I thought to check it is because a listener said they emailed me to tell me they are sending perishable goods. So I was like, oh, I better check that to make sure when they're there. But now I have, just so you know, I have put an alert on my phone to remind me to go to the post office at least once a week to.
Bob, I sent you egg salad in December.
Right. All right. So now we need a transition. But thanks, Dan, for sending that. Sorry it took so long. If you thought Zach was ignoring you, he wasn't. He just didn't have it till today.
Correct.
And so now moving on to more serious things, we just got in the moment, I have to admit, it seemed like devastating news in our season 1 case, the Adnan Syed case, that Adnan's conviction has been reinstated.
Will you please, for me and I know there's a lot of listeners, please tell us what this means, because I read the articles and I still don't fully get it.
What did you think I was about to do?
God damn it! It's called work.
Sorry. Of course, that's what I'm gonna do.
I know, but it's called back and forth, Bob. You guys bitch about me not talking, and then I talk, and then I get thrown under the goddamn bus for talking.
I'm sorry.
YouTube, do you see this?
Okay. All right, Kelly, we'll just come right back into this. Yeah, so I watched Rabia did an Instagram live today on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, which when we're recording this about a couple of hours ago. And I did some research yesterday and was just kind of following along with what was going on, read the order. And it doesn't sound like this is going to be that really much of a big deal at all. So the reason the conviction was reinstated, as you know, the AG that was that Mosby had kind of came after for not disclosing stuff in the case, who then
Kevin
was
Urick,
pushing back against her. And then what was the name again, Janet?
Kevin Urick.
No, it wasn't Urick. It was the Attorney General higher up.
Oh, I can't remember.
I can't remember either. But anyway, so they were. What seems to me is that he had kind of attached themselves to Hayes' brother, young Lee, and kind of filed this suit on his behalf for them, that saying that the family wasn't given enough notice about the hearing where Adnan's conviction was overturned. And so that is the principle. That's why the conviction was reinstated, because a judge ruled that they in fact did not have enough notice. But it's a weird thing, because for anybody who was following the live tweets or was on our live stream that we were doing during that hearing, Young, while he did not get a chance to be there, well, and I mean, he did. I think he was notified like on Thursday or Friday the week before, and the hearing was on a Monday. Which the judge ruled was not a reasonable enough time for him to get on a plane and go there, which it may not have been for him. But what the judge did do is pause the hearing, wait until he got off work, and let him Zoom into the hearing, and gave him the opportunity to speak before the decision was made, which they thought would have been good enough. And as it turns out, the judge ruled that that was not good enough. So they essentially, when they say they reinstated his conviction, what they did is they null and voided that hearing. Is what's happened here, because he wasn't allowed to be there. Brian Frosch, thank you everybody in the chat.
Oh, Frosch.
But what's interesting about it, from what Robbie was saying on her live this morning, is that evidently the judge was saying the family has a right to physically be in the room during the hearing, Interestingly, they do not have the right to actually speak while they're there at that level. Like down in the circuit court, they do, but at that level, they don't. So what's, the whole thing is really, it's bullshit, really, because he was actually given the opportunity to speak, but he wasn't physically in the room, which, how many hearings have been done that way since 2020?
Right.
But in any case, and the other thing that bothers me about it is I read what he said, and certainly from that did not get the impression that he was overly upset. He did say that he thought that the DA's office was on his side and he's hurt, but also, he hates the idea of somebody that actually killed his sister could still be out there and free. And he essentially said that he trusted in what the district attorney, Marilyn Mosby, was doing. So where that leaves us, Robbie said there's a couple of options. One option, and by the way, the decision, the conviction being overturned was stayed for, I believe, 60 days, which means nothing. It's not like they're not going to put Adnan back in prison right now. Like he's got 60 days to kind of figure this stuff out. Now they can appeal that decision up to a higher court, which Robbie said, in a perfect world, she would, that's what they would want to do, because what they don't want is this precedent being set now for other cases to where, you can overturn a conviction, send somebody home for months, and then be like, oh, just kidding, you got to go back now because a family member wasn't in the courtroom. It sets an ugly precedent. The problem is that appeals process could take years.
Right.
The other option is to just, if I understood what Robbie was saying, right, and I encourage all of you to go watch her live. I'm sure it's still up on her page. The other option there is for them to just basically accept what the judge said. So the hearing has to be redone, and just go redo the hearing. There was no argument on the facts or the reasoning behind the conviction being vacated. It was simply because Young didn't have the opportunity to be there in person. So all they have to do is go redo it. Now, Marilyn Mosby is not there anymore. She was voted out. Ivan Bates is the new DA. But Robbie sounds like she has zero. She said in her live stream, she's actually personal friends with Ivan Bates.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ivan Bates has stated publicly, and I think he was even on her documentary.
He's in the documentary.
Yeah.
He's in Amy Berg's documentary. Like he's been so vocal about Adnan from before he was elected. Even like, I just can't imagine that.
Yeah. And he said publicly that he would drop the charges, I believe. Yes,
he did.
And so Robbie has said the way she understands it is he could just go back and redo and literally just do it'll be the same judge, everything, just redo the hearing with Young there, and then we get the same result. And she said in the live stream too, she said, or Bates actually, he could just drop the charges and not even have to redo the hearing, not even have to jump through that hoop. So
that seems like a lot to put Young through too. I mean, I mean, I know this is not ideal on anyone's side. It feels like the AG is just giving the finger to everybody, because him not being able to say anything this time, and then being there, and then having to sit through everything he already heard before that's upsetting every time. All of that kind of stuff just seems like, why are we doing this?
Well, and to be clear, it's not that he won't, like that he can't have the opportunity to speak. It was just that he's not like guaranteed the right to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot.
I appreciate that. It just seems like a lot to put that family through as well.
Yeah. So. And to be fair, we don't know what Young, like me saying that Brian Frosch has manipulated him and used him as a pawn in this game. That is just my speculation, just based on what I'm seeing and what Young has actually said. For all we know, it may be Young as the one. It could be the one who's actually pushing for this. So we don't. Maybe he really does want it. I just have a hard time believing that, for a lot of the reasons that you just said, Janet. Like, why would he want to, when you know the result's going to be the same? But the big thing is, as a lot as upsetting as it is, that you should know that it really shouldn't result in Adnan actually going back to prison.
Right. Well, Andy and Montana in the chat say that the opinion actually is not just about the family being present or not, that they have issues with the content of the hearing. So I have not read the opinion yet. So
I read through some of it, and I read several articles that were written about it. And they also, if either of you, I see Andy and Montana in the chat, have both said something If you want to, I'll come back to it. If you want to just kind of bullet point briefly in the YouTube chat what the other issues are.
Yeah.
Convicted. Okay. But for now, we'll move on from that. And if there's anything else in there, but that's, I said, I read articles, and then Rabia, who is connected to the case, that was how she was explaining things on her live this morning. Andy just said that she can't just drop the charges because he would still be convicted.
They have to go through the hearing again to then vacate the sentence, to then not drop charges, I guess.
Yeah,
or to then
which
drop or
that
not
made
drop
sense to me. I
charges.
didn't quite understand what she meant. Maybe I misunderstood her, because she just said kind of offhandedly he could just drop the charges. We don't do the hearing, but I don't know how, because technically, yeah, he's convicted
Right.
now, so I would think you still have to go through the hearing. But
Hmm.
it doesn't sound like there's really any risk at this point of it not actually going back to prison.
Well, we'll hope for the best. This has been a real roller coaster ride of a case, so I guess never take anything for granted.
Yep. With that, I don't think we have any other housekeeping stuff up, so we'll go ahead and get right into the questions.
Okay, great. Well, this episode, the Court of Public Opinion, obviously you gave us a little more information about things that we have in many cases already talked about on some level or another that were not presented in court for the case itself, but that have continued to have and hold sway over the Court of Public Opinion, which is, we see the way these things intersect and how they can affect each other. So you wanted to dispel some of that stuff, in particular, this conversation that, Daniela had with law enforcement, saying that she knew that there was this altercation that supposedly
Right.
had happened with Robert that wasn't Robert, right? So
Yeah.
Lots of questions about that. Just to make a general statement about, for example, Crime Watch Daily, a couple of different people had questions about this, Jason and Rebecca, wondering if there's any way to make Crime Watch Daily retract what they've done, or is there legal action that you can take when a clear fact is being perpetrated, like just perpetuated out in the media forever?
No, that's no. They probably have some disclaimer or something at the beginning, and this stuff happens all the time. I also just realized that I didn't ask either of you two what you guys thought about your thoughts on the episode.
There was a lot of things that jumped out to me right away. I know you addressed them in the episode, but I caught them right away before you addressed them, like the aspect of Daniela saying that Robert came in with his military friend. I mean, that jumped out to me immediately. And you did address the fact that you're like, well, Christian wasn't in the military at that point.
Yeah.
But there were so many aspects like that felt like she was trying to make herself more important to the case, or more important in Becky's life. The aspect of her talking about Javier. And she's like, yeah, she had this friend with benefits, Javier. And then from everything we've known, including the officer even says that, well, we don't think that they were friends with benefits. We just think that they were best friends.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. For knowing a lot, she knew a little. She
didn't really know
detail. Like, it seemed like she didn't know that she was dating Jacob.
Right.
There was a lot that she didn't seem to know what was going on.
So to me, it just felt like Daniela was trying to, maybe in her own mind, persuade herself that she was more important in Becky's life than she really was.
Well, I'll just say that familiar relationships vary from family to family. I have a cousin who is like I'm incredibly close to, in that I feel like he's my brother. Do I talk to him every week? No. But if someone said, are you close with Julian? I would be like, we're deeply close. He's one of the most important people to me in my life. But that doesn't necessarily mean I know exactly he's dating and when, if that makes sense. So I don't blame her for feeling close to a family member. It's just hard. And I feel like she tried to say, like, yeah, maybe I didn't know. There's, I wouldn't necessarily know this, or this. So I don't want to fault her for saying she's close, because I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, that's
no, and I don't either. And I would think, as you were saying, the examples in my life to where, like, there are people that I'm and look, I mean, like, Becky took the time to call her on Thursday, and they talked for like this is not a cousin she's not in contact with. I think that they had a close relationship, and I don't think there's any way to to define what close means. But what I think, to your point, Zach, what was interesting to me was that she didn't seem to know details of what was happening right then, which is what's
Absolutely.
important to the investigation.
Absolutely.
You know, so like
100%.
they could have been close and they did talk a lot, but Becky clearly wasn't talking to her about her boyfriends. And I think, did she not even really know Javier's name?
Yeah, I don't think she knew his name.
You know,
Maybe
like-
she did.
She
Yeah,
did,
so-
and she definitely didn't know Jacob. Like, yeah, she didn't know Jacob.
Yeah, I don't think
There
so
was
either.
there was a lot that was
Yeah.
not
and
super
there's
not super helpful to the case, but then was sort of used.
right. And
Anyway.
there's some people in the chat that are like, yeah, but she was lying. I genuinely don't. I think that like some people understand this and some people are just refuse to accept that people's memories can be manipulated. And I promise you they can be. And
Right.
that I really think that there was a conversation, it was years ago, and then more and more information comes in and it just like builds this new false memory. I think she genuinely, I bet if you had hooked her up to a polygraph, it would say she was telling. I think she believed what she was
Right.
saying is true. I genuinely
agree.
believe that.
Yes.
I agree.
Well, you can see the way things could have been conflated. I mean, you can sort of see the way hearing about the hike and the conversation about maybe going on a hike gets conflated with this other altercation that's happening that is unrelated to that, but happens around the same time. And you sort
Mhm.
of meld those two memories together. So now they've had an altercation and they decide to go on a hike to talk more about this altercation. Like, that's two separate groups of people that have sort of become the same group in her mind. And I totally understand that.
Yeah. And we see, I didn't talk about the episode, but we see an evolution of the story, even from the interview to the Crime Watch Daily interview, like the addition of, it was Robert's military friend that he was there.
Yeah, in fact, Corinne, thank you for that, because Corinne says in the Crime Watch Daily episode, they stated that Daniela said the friend was a military guy, but I did not hear that in this interview. Did they add that, or did she add that later? So that clarification on the
Yeah. So
two
you heard
separate
it in the
conversations.
episode, but where you heard it was in the Crime Watch Daily interview, where she said that she was with the military friend. And then the Crime Watch Daily commentator says, and that military friend was Christian Smith, who was there with him that day, which no one's ever alleged Christian was there with him.
Right.
You know, but that was like, you saw that evolution. It was like, as more information came in, she was absorbing that information and kind of adding it to her story, because the Crime Watch Daily was filmed after, I believe that update was filmed after the arrest was made. So, you know, by that point, she knew it was Robert and Christian who was in the army and everything. So now it becomes, it was his military friend was there.
Yeah.
You know, there's just new information coming in and it's adding to her story.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just reading all of these things that have come in since we were talking. I got to come back to it. Okay, so Suzanne and Nancy and Megan, you know, this is dating back to when we very first started talking about this alleged altercation. What we hear Javi say to law enforcement, saying that it was Austin. We've never found out who the other person was. We don't think it's Jacob. Obviously, Austin mentions in his interview from many years later that he was there with a buddy and that he happened to see Becky. So we've been trying to piece those puzzle pieces together and what day it was for quite some time. And I don't feel like we have any more information than we had back then. But folks are still just, you know, wondering, like, do we know for sure it was Austin, and what could they have been fighting about, and what day, and all of that. But we kind of know what we know, right?
All we have is Javier saying that he went to pick her up, and Austin had been there, and he's very clear that I played that clip where he's like, no, it was my cousin's roommate, Austin Alba. He was there and he created a scene, and that's all we know. That's all we know about it is strictly what Javier said. Right.
And this was not used in court. That's,
no,
you kind of say that at the beginning of the episode, right? Like,
yeah, and that's why I titled it Court of Public Opinion, because there's people that, you know, like Crime Watch Daily, and then I've seen tons of people that are like on the internet, you know, that are discussing the case amongst us, that have cited that, well, Danielle, you know, Robert did this, and Robert went there and did it was not used in court because it was provably false. Like it like I said, it doesn't take any time at all to see her best friend who picked her up from work that night said that it was Austin, not Robert.
Right. Chris and Vicky and Jenny and Lucy, you know, as we talk about these different stories conflating and maybe not being sure who's being talked about, and Daniela maybe not being sure who's being talked about, they just kind of were thinking about this association with Austin and people mistaking, Tiffany here saying that somebody had a similar job to what Austin had, but that she was thinking of that as a boyfriend of Becky's. So people are still sort of, just wondering, speculating, like, is there more going on with Austin with Becky than we understood? And for me, I just feel like it's more just the conflation of like confusion and bad memory and stuff like that. But what do you think? What do you guys think?
I think that, I mean, we don't have any proof that something like that happened or any evidence. For me, there's kind of, if there's smoke, there's fire, and I don't think it's related to the crime, to the murders, but it's one of those kind of, if there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing, where like we've seen a few little things that maybe indicate that maybe Becky had something going on with Austin, like the thing that, when Tiffany is talking about that she was dating this guy that did something with home, whatever that sounded, she kind of described Austin. And then Austin, and I find it weird, like, what would Austin go to the restaurant and get into an argument with her about? Like, to me, like, and I think we talked about before, like, to have that kind of emotion towards somebody, to like go out and be that mad at them, there has to be a strong kind of emotion the other way. But that's
maybe,
all that.
But also, if you're a person who is very temperamental and gets angry easily, it
and so
nothing to her.
So for me, the answer is I don't know. I don't know. I wonder if maybe there had been something at some point going on with Austin, but I have no evidence to support that.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't think it's
sorry,
something
Zach.
I'm with you. I don't think it's something to really speculate on. I think if there is something, I don't feel like it's related to the case.
Yeah.
Sorry, Zach. Kristen says, has anyone spoken to Daniela since this interview to share what Javi said about the argument at Denny's?
All we have is that's the problem with so many elements of this case, is that law enforcement never followed. You heard LeClaire in that interview. They have that whole hour, 2-hour long interview with just nothing substantial coming out of it at all. And then Javier says, by the way, my cousin's, who was the ex she had just broken up with, his roommate the night before, and I'm not sure it was, but he says it was the night before the murders, went to Denny's and had this huge altercation with him. And LeClaire's response, and I quote, is, okay, I think we're done here. And then he's never asked about it again. They interview Austin. They never ask Austin about it. They never, like, it's never, ever, ever followed up on. So we don't know.
It is disheartening because you think out of everything, even if it is nothing, you'd think you would at least ask a follow-up question to it.
I had forgotten that his literal response is, I think we're done here. I had forgotten that that's what he said, to the point where I was like, did he not hear that at all? Or did he think like, oh, was he in a space where he was like, this guy probably has something to do with this, and now he's just trying to like deflect even more, having already deflected with Robert. Now he's trying to throw some other guy in at the end of the conversation just to like get me to nibble. I don't know. It's such a like intense, like, I think we're done here. Like, whoa,
total dismissal. Yeah. And I think it could be either of those two things. I hadn't thought about that, because you really, like we've discussed before, it seems like LeClaire really thought that Javier was a good suspect for a long time. So that could have been it. He could have been like, or Javier's the guilty person here, and so I don't care what you're. And then also, if you listen to like the full interview, but from back when we played the whole interview, he is kind of like, LeClaire's kind of trying to wrap things up at that point. But he does ask him another question that I don't remember what the question was, but it kind of, he's like, is there anything else you want to add? But you can kind of hear LeClaire shuffling. It's almost like he's like shuffling papers around, getting ready to write. So yeah, I wonder if he like just completely is so bad at his job that he wasn't listening when Javier said that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Bolaños for a second. One of the things that came up for me that I didn't see a question about, and if I missed it, I apologize, but I thought this was the first time that someone said that Tanya was the impetus for Bolaños being involved, not Ron. Is that the first time we've heard that?
It is the first time we've heard it, but
is it accurate?
I think it was. So remember, Tiffany is not Ron's father,
right?
Or not Ron's daughter,
right?
There's pretty tumultuous relationship there, and there's the FBI investigation and the allegations of abuse and all that. So Tiffany seems like does not care for Ron. Tanya is Ron's daughter. And so I think that I think that she was, with Ron in that, but I believe that it was Ron that was one that was actually kind of, Ron's the one you see in the YouTube videos and all the stuff that Bolaños puts out, is with kind of Ron at the forefront.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Fiona says, will there be an episode covering the investigation specifically undertaken by Bolaños?
I don't know if I have enough information to do. I mean, I don't know anything about the guy. I know that he that he was responsible for putting out videos at one point that made it look like Javier was guilty, and then videos that made it look like Robert and Christian are guilty. And then he put together this whole Hollywood reenactment.
Okay, I'm glad you're telling
out.
us more about this because, yeah, like Aileen definitely wanted to know what the sort of propaganda was that was being mentioned. Same with Brooke and Tracy. Like, what's the information that law enforcement is saying? Watch out, because that could sway the jury and all of that.
Well, at one point they put out a video where Ron, because they found, I don't know if I think we talked about it a long time ago.
The ring in the car? Yeah.
Where Ron found in Becky's car his ex-wife Javier's mother's ring that was like had an inscription from Javier's dad in it, and they're putting that in the video, like, why is this ring in her car? And it was like, and they say all this stuff, and Javier was driving up there that night and he was doing, so that could be the propaganda they were kind of talking about, that the officers didn't like that, because I think at the point when this interview occurs, that the Crime Watch Daily stuff, I know the Crime Watch Daily stuff hadn't come out yet. So they're trying to build a case against Robert and Christian while Bolaños and Ron are out doing press releases and press conferences and putting videos out pointing at Javier the whole time. And so I think that's why they didn't care much for that. And then there was a shift. I don't know at what point the shift became more about Robert and Christian. But because I think Bolaños had talked to Daniela already by this point, by the time she did the interview.
Chris says, Chris, I haven't seen this. I don't know what this is, but Chris says, what's the significance of the video portraying Becky taking off her shoes before being attacked? That's the dramatic reenactment you were just talking about.
Yeah. And I have no idea. Again, it was like a Hollywood thing. Like, how they'll do like a close up.
Like America's Most Wanted kind of.
Well, I'm sure it's to fit. It's to fit what they know.
But it's not, because she was found with one shoe on, and his reenactment, she takes off both shoes and then runs outside barefoot.
Thank you
for
that.
Valeria just is sort of wondering, because of the term pro bono being thrown around with Bolaños, like if, there's sort of maybe there's a reward in it at the end if we actually, if the pro bono turns into something else. I mean,
I have no idea
that, but okay. Well, we covered Brooke and Tracy's question about the investigation and the propaganda. Nick and Rena wanted to know, would you be interested in trying to interview Bolaños? Is that something you've thought about or reached out about?
I thought about it. I may have even reached out to him at the very beginning because someone gave me his contact. I'm trying to remember if I had reached out or was planning, but I don't see any value in it. But based on what I've seen from what he's put out, it seems like he'd gather some information and then speculate on what happened and then put out to the public that it did happen. And then, oops, that's wrong. And so he gathered more information, then put out different stuff to the public saying, well, now this is what happened. I don't really see much of a value in it.
Mm-hmm. And then Rena was also wondering, and maybe we just talked about this and I missed it, but whether by this interview with law enforcement, had Daniela spoken to Bolaños already, or was he saying
it's not clear.
You may hear from someone that you shouldn't talk to?
It's not. I came away with the impression that she had spoken to him, but I'm not positive about that. Do you remember if she had? Because did she mention him, or did just the officers mention him?
Because we know other
like
people have said,
officer,
like, I talked to that guy. Yeah.
I feel like just the officers bring it, but I don't remember if she actually.
Well, I think what it was is he mentions Tanya and Bolaños, and she was just like, yeah, like she had, like she sounded like, yeah, she knew all about that.
Yeah. Okay. So Kristen says, did we know that Daniela's sister lived at Chuck's house? Was she interviewed?
I don't think so. But I think when we heard from Chuck way back, I think he had talked about that one of her cousins had either stayed with him or she stayed there, or that, you know, they all lived in that same area together. So I wasn't surprised to hear that she had lived with her at some point, but I didn't remember from Chuck's interview if he had said that the cousin stayed with him and Becky, or if she had left and went and stayed with her for a minute, or she wanted her to, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Uh, okay, we've talked about this a little bit already, but you know, Christy and Lucy, I just want to acknowledge these folks for pointing it out as well. Christy and Lucy and Angela and Courtney and Sarah. We've talked about this, but I just want to. Christy says, I do question how close Becky and Danielle actually were. Didn't know Robert's last name. Didn't know about Javi. Doesn't know the friend circle outside of Claire, or that she was dating Jacob. Asked about the pregnancy. Said Becky would never tell her something like that. But I kept this in here because I also wanted to just quickly say, you know, I agree that when Christy says, I also feel like Robert not going to a vigil or a celebration of life or something like that was over 4 hours away says anything about guilt, that it shouldn't have spoken volumes about Robert, which is what the law enforcement agent responds with, like, oh, that speaks volumes about him, or anyone else for that matter. So we haven't really talked about that yet, and I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, and it's also, I'm sure most of you picked up on this. It's very clear at this point that what Bodmer is trying to do, and you're going to hear more of that coming this weekend. He's just trying to somehow build a case against Robert. Like, there's no objectivity at all in him at this point.
But he's
like,
not the one conducting this interview. Is he? Didn't
not?
sound like his voice to
I've
me.
listened to so many interviews this week.
I don't think it was him.
I think he was at least there.
Yeah, I'm sure, maybe. Yeah.
But I should say the cold case unit, like that, like they were trying to get Robert and Christian convicted at this point, and that was like that. Like, oh, he didn't travel 4 hours to go to a vigil with a bunch of people he doesn't know. Well, that speaks volumes. No, it doesn't. It doesn't speak any volumes. Are there more questions about, you mentioned the pregnancy talk? Are there more questions about that?
No, just that was something that Daniela said I wouldn't even necessarily know about. But obviously that was at that time very important to the cold case investigator. So let's talk more about that.
Well, again, listen to the evolution there. He asked her very directly, did you ever hear anything about Becky being pregnant or saying she had a pregnancy scare or anything like that? Nope. She would tell me if she did. And then he keeps pushing and keeps pushing. And it's like, oh, well, it seems like maybe there was a time when it's like she had already answered it. And that's kind of like, she seems very impressionable because he asks a direct question. She gives a direct answer. He asks it again, same direct answer, continues to ask and push it and ask in different ways until all of a sudden now she's telling a story about how maybe at some time that she had maybe thought she was or something.
I think that's very normal for anyone talking to law enforcement. I feel like we've heard that all the way through this season, is people feeling like they need to be helpful. And if they're pressed, they feel like they want to give an answer because they want to have more than they have. And it's hard not to be kind of coaxed into being like, well, or like, maybe they know something I don't, and this is really important, and I should be remembering something I'm not. Like, it puts people on the back foot in a weird way, you know? And if he had heard from Brandon, you know, he sort of is pointing at, well, I had this conversation with Brandon that made it seem like maybe this was a thing. So are you sure you don't know anything about it? You know?
Right. And people, and Zach he wrote down and was asking me a minute ago who Brandon was. Brandon was Brandon Kugler Harrison. We heard that interview as a bonus months ago. And he was the friend. He lived over where Chuck lived, and he met Becky there, and they became friends. And I need to go back, and maybe someone from the chat can answer this, because he says in the interview that, well, from Brandon, it sounds like there was a miscarriage. But I'm trying to remember, did Brandon actually tell him that in that interview?
I don't remember.
Or is he kind of twisting that?
I don't know, because I must have missed it, because I didn't know who Brandon was in the slightest bit.
Yeah. Well, it was a long time ago when we heard
he was one interview inside an episode with a couple of interviews, I think, if memory serves.
No, I think I posted his as a bonus.
Oh, you did?
Okay. It was a
Okay.
bonus interview.
Yeah.
But if anybody in the chat recalls if Brandon actually, in the transcript's probably up on the website, because I don't remember Brandon specifically saying that it was. It seemed like if anything, it seemed like if anything, it was similar to what he got out of Daniela, which is kind of pushed in as I could have been, and maybe it seems like that's the way I remember it, but I'll have to go back and we can talk about next week's follow-up if nobody remembers when I have a chance to go back through the transcript. But yeah, I'm wondering if Brandon actually told him that, or if he was just saying Brandon told him that to pull it out of Daniela.
Yeah, I can't remember. And I'm sure we talked about it. If it was in there, I'm sure we talked about it.
Well, and Tracy just said in the chat she also doesn't recall Brandon saying anything about a pregnancy.
Yeah.
And so
okay,
did Amy.
We'll give a. Okay. That may be something will come up that's definitive. But thanks, chat, for trying to help us remember. The guest book from the service, Rachel just pointed out that she said that it would be good to collect that guest book from the service to possibly find more people to interview, but that was so late in the game. I'm guessing they didn't try to hunt that down.
I don't think so. And I want to point out, from the consensus of the chat from everybody is saying that doesn't sound like Brandon actually said anything about a miscarriage in the interview. So people are asking, was there another interview? I haven't seen another interview. I think that was the only time they interviewed him, as far as I know. Wait, now Teresa said there was a second Brandon interview, so we'll wait to see because I know Teresa knows the case pretty well, so we'll see what she says.
Okay. Caroline says, did the investigators interview Daniela's mom prior to this interview? And if so, did she mention anything about this phone call between Daniela and Becky, since Daniela states she tells her mom right away after the murders?
In the case file that I've seen zero evidence that they ever spoke to her mom, either at this point or back at the beginning, when Daniela says, "Oh, I told my mom right away," and she told the police. I don't see anything documented about that.
Okay. Sarah says, when did the investigators realize that it wasn't Robert and Christian who were at Denny's? Is there any documentation of this? Also had that question about whether Daniela was ever told that it was definitely not those guys, or that it was she was just left to believe that it was right. And just wanted to verify, because this is provably false, the only way this information was even out there was through the press and the media, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was all through the kind of campaign that Bolaños was putting on.
So is there any place that we see that that law enforcement in their investigation is sort of filing away, we know that this was not these guys, so we can move on? Is there sort of a reference to that's actually
they talk to her, they make her seem like that seems reasonable and they believe it, and then they obviously go no further with it. It seems like they're not looking for bad evidence. She's telling them this story, it sounds good, but I think they knew that it wasn't accurate, and so they just moved on instead of following up and figuring out what actually happened. Because this is what is infuriating about it, is they make very clear that they think this altercation at Denny's is very important if it's Robert and Christian. If it's someone else, then it's not important at all. And I think once they knew that it wasn't Robert and or Christian, and so they just stopped looking into it. But if it's them, then it's important.
Okay. Teresa has a great question about law enforcement requests for voicemails stretching beyond Becky's voicemails. Do they know that they made requests for Becky, Robert, Javi, and Jacob? And we know that the voicemails were unrecoverable because her service was canceled. But doesn't it seem unusual that T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon would all ignore the requests, and there wouldn't be any documentation about why those voicemails were unavailable?
No, I have not seen any documentation that the voicemails were unavailable. And it was that Teresa? Because she had messaged me and pointed that out as well, that those requests are in there for all those voicemails, and there are no voicemails in the file. So I agree with you. It seems very odd that they requested all these voicemails and we have none of them in the case files. And those voicemails could paint a really clear picture. Not forget about anything between Robert and Becky. If Becky left a voicemail for Javier, that could be very telling. Man, and I don't remember if there was a call right then, but there's all these different calls that she was making, and what if there was a voicemail to Javier where he said like, never mind if you want to come back, he didn't, or whatever, something like that. Not to say that that's what actually occurred, but it is very strange and frustrating that they've requested all these voicemails and the case file is absent of voicemails.
Yeah. Okay. Great call, Teresa. And then folks are wondering, because you had said last week, we're getting closer to closing out this season. I think that sparked a lot of people's interest and or confusion, just for more information on that. I know that you weren't super clear about what that meant, whether it meant in a week or in 6 weeks, how many episodes were left, and probably because you don't actually know. But Adina and Autumn and Jeremy were wondering. I'm going to read Adina's comment. I had previously understood that once we investigate the investigation, we'll start our own. Last week you mentioned we'll close out the season. Is this because of what's going on in real time with the case, or is it because we've identified those avenues, but there's only so much we can do? Like, where you're thinking about that? Could you clarify more about what you said last week about getting closer?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a little time left. I'm just letting you know that we're approaching the end, because somebody too had said, I thought we were going to cover the trial, and like that's what we're doing now. That's what we're wrapping now. Is we've started hitting. We did, we investigated the investigation, and now we're going through the trial, the case against Robert and Christian that was used at trial, point by point by point. And so this week will actually be Sunday, will be the last episode of the elements of the case against them. Then I want to go through kind of closing arguments that were used. So we're going to cover those still. And then I want to go through, the new investigation. The issue we have is we've identified several paths for the current attorneys to work with through habeas and working with the DA to try to find out, namely, as far as, next step would be DNA testing. So hopefully that's going to be happening soon. So that path is there. We don't have a lot of other paths because investigators didn't look a lot of other directions. There are a couple things that that we're going to cover as far as new investigation, new suspects. There's at least 2 I can think of off the top of my head that I want to cover and see where that goes. And then I still want to try, now that we've kind of got a full picture, I want to try to reach out to some of the people that we haven't heard from. Particularly, I would really love to be able to speak with Tiffany, especially now that I have a lot more information. So I'm going to make attempts at Tiffany, attempts at Javier, and see if we can get any of those final interviews. I want to just be able to hear from anyone in the convicted's families that want to, share their feelings on where we've gone so far. I haven't asked yet, but possibly maybe one or both of the attorneys for the convicted to come on, and if they're willing to. And I don't know if they will be, because again, they're they're writing the habeas right now. If they want to come in and talk about where things are going to go from here. And then I still want to do the, as we do every season, bring on somebody who believes that Robert and Christian are guilty, to have them come on and lay that case out, just to kind of balance things out, where, we've reached the end. This is the conclusion that I've come to. And here's someone who it came to a very different conclusion. Let you hear that. And I think that we have somebody lined up to do that. I've been emailing with someone, getting that stuff arranged. So if you're following along, that's 4, 5, 6, episodes that are still to go. So we still have a little ways to go. And keep in mind, when we do the new investigation, there have been some cases where we start doing that, like the Melgar case or wherever, where that leads one lead to another, and that's what we're always hoping for, that'll get us to where we need to be. And we can further play that out. And then other cases, sometimes it's like, we have this information, it's all I have, nobody's talking, and I'm not a police officer, so I can't get any more, I can't subpoena requests or any information. So we'll see how things go as we move on with that. But yeah, I was just letting you know that, I would say within 2 months tops we'll be done, possibly less than that. We're getting close to the end. And then we have season 13 is in the works right now, and it's going to be interesting, something a little different, as kind of an in-between season. And I'm very, very excited about doing this. It's just to, I'm still not going to let you guys know exactly what we're going to be doing, but I will tell you that it is not like other like in between where I just interview people just as kind of space fillers. The season 13, our in between season, is going to be heavily involving you, the listeners, engaging in some serious work that we're going to try to do as we search for the next big wrongful conviction case that we're going to be doing.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, yeah, I guess in the context of us having spent 13 months talking about this, getting closer can still mean there are a significant amount of episodes left. So, but it's great to have that clarification.
Yep. And was that the end of the questions?
That is.
Zach, did you have anything else to add?
Nope, I got my one question answered.
Yep. And I saw you were scanning through Brandon's transcript.
Yep, nothing in there.
Yep. And so it's somebody in the chat, I think Teresa in the chat said there was a second interview with Brandon. So we will double check with that. And we'll come back next week and I'll get that up and posted if I can find it as a bonus. And I'll post a document to see if, because that was, and I'm glad I'm not nuts, because that's when he said to Daniela that, oh, after talking with Brandon, that's not the impression we got. All I was thinking is like, you're so full of shit, because I remember Brandon's interview and that wasn't the case, but maybe they pulled it out of him in the next one. So all that coming up this weekend on Sunday, we're going to hear from what will be the last element of the state's case against Robert and Christian, which is they had testified Chad Birnbaum, who he testified, I don't want to say against, but he testified for the prosecution in the case against Robert and Christian. So we're going to cover his testimony in similar set of circumstances. You can watch a nice evolution of how a story goes from the first time they tell it till they get on the stand, and how things change.
All right.
And then that'll be, and if you've heard all this and you haven't been convinced by the state's evidence that Robert and Christian are guilty, you're not alone, because I'm not convinced either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
All right.
All
With
right.
that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure you tune in on Sunday and next week, and in the follow-up thread next week on Facebook. Don't let me forget to follow up on that Brandon Kugler Harrison second interview. So we'll do that.
Cool.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks, Zach. Thanks,
Awesome.
chat. Zach, chat.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Wish that hadn't happened. Or we stay at the end of our record. Oh, let me.
Thanks,
All right, now we're done
y'all.
recording. Let me bust through the chat, see if anything I missed. Javi said
No.
Becky told Robert she wasn't pregnant, miscarried, and didn't tell Robert she miscarried. Miscarried, suspected she had an abortion. Yeah, they're just talking about why the investigators may have been. So, people said maybe it's because they were trying to like confirm what Javier had said. I think it's because they were trying to find some way to make, in my opinion, that business card make sense. It's like, oh, she was maybe pregnant, maybe had a miscarriage. Well, maybe it wasn't a miscarriage, maybe it was an abortion.
Right.
And even though Javier said that she told him that it happened, but then she never told Robert, maybe, they're trying to make it so there was a reason why there would have been a business card from a pro-life organization. So thanks everybody on the chat. We are going to end this thing, and we will talk to you guys next week. We'll come up with a new song to play for you. It'll be a lot of fun.